Arsenal come streaming forward now in surely what will be their last attack. A good ball by Dixon, finding Smith. But Thomas charging through the midfield. Thomas, it's up for grabs now. Thomas, right at
the end. Hello and welcome to Gooners in the USA. Mike, the league, the title chase is back on.
Happy days are here again. Dude, we are mid-tables. I said we are mid-table. It's good times. It's good times once again, at least for today until we start talking about next week's game. But
Seriously. But, yeah, tough. Bournemouth aren't no joke. They're a good side. And,
this season they're kind of a joke.
Yeah, they are struggling a little bit. But did we look that good or did they look that bad?
Well, Andy, I think we will talk about that a little bit in just a few minutes. Let's introduce our guest because we have. I'm excited to speak with Harry. We've been this has been overdue for about 4 or 5 months or so, and so today we have a journalist who covers the Premier League for the Daily Star and Sunday Express, with a little bit of speciality and familiarity with something of a fairly interesting and polarizing figure of late. So. We'll talk about that in a minute. He's also the founder and the mastermind behind the Hypothetical Premier League, which just the name of that sounds fascinating to me. It could be found on www.thehpl.net. Takes you through the premiership and what the results in the table would look like if every bad refereeing decision by Mike Dean and his friends were corrected by video replay. So welcome to the podcast, Mr. Harry Pratt. Thanks for joining us, Harry.
Oh, well, pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So Harry, you, as I understand it, you're not an Arsenal supporter per se, but you get a pass for that because you've raised your children properly. Is that accurate?
Well, some would say that, and I'm sure you lot would all say that. Yeah, we actually were living in Highbury when we started having our kids. So we were, and that was when the old Highbury was still in full throttle. So they were born and bred Gooners, and then we actually, for one reason or another, moved out of London, but they obviously completely retained their Arsenal blood, and so that's that. And as a good dad, I let them carry on being that because I think it's everyone's dream to be born a mile or two from their local football ground and to be a supporter of Arsenal or whoever it might be. So that's how that happened. So yes. I have to say, over the years. So we're talking, I don't know, when we moved out of Highbury, it was about 2002. But strangely, up until that time, although I'd been a sports journalist with the Sun and the Sky, where I was at that time, hadn't really ever covered Arsenal. I was always tended to do South London and the like down there. But through, a face or whatever, I started covering Arsenal a lot when I moved to the Daily Star Sunday, when it launched back in 2003, 15 years ago, almost to the day, I think. And obviously then, every Friday, I'd have the pleasure, really, it became, of interviewing Arsene Wenger every Friday before the games and covering a lot of their games. And I think my first full season covering them was the Invincible season. So you can see how things slightly changed. And with a young family who were all absolute Arsenal mad, especially my lad Louis.
They must have been crazy about it.
Yeah, and that actually did grow on me quite a bit. And, Arsene Wenger, what a very powerful man in his company, fascinating, very interesting. And the press conferences were quite different then to how they are now. They were, far
happier
in respect. Well, I mean, they were in 2003-4 for sure. And in that time. But yeah, no, I mean, whatever you say about, I know we'll talk about him, I'm sure, at length as time goes on, but, they're an amazing man. And until you sort of meet the guy regularly, perhaps it's easy not to realise that as an outsider. So, I have to say they grew on me a lot, and with the family, with the kids, and being a responsible dad, I would say they are a result I look for regularly, as you can imagine. And I've been to an awful lot of games as a fan, as it were, with the kids as well as work. So I feel quite well versed in them. But a lot of people mistake me for a sort of die-hard Gooner in that respect. But no, I do have a sort of strong affiliation, shall we say.
Well, you can be forgiven for that. And the way that we came in contact was last spring. I was in London and was chatting with Paul, who owns Piebury Corner, and he says to me, he's like, I got the perfect person for you to interview for your podcast. The guy's probably had more one-on-one conversations with Arsene Wenger than anybody else in the press, or maybe in his life, or whatever. So I'm thinking Arsene Wenger. I don't know if we can get anyone interested in that topic. No one's really talking about him. It's just kidding.
Yeah.
So you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but how does your story first with the 2003-2004 season start, and kind of give us a little bit of background of the person you came to know over the years and how that was.
Okay, well, I mean, firstly, Paul was slightly exaggerating in respect to one-on-one.
I'm sure.
I don't believe how many. I mean, in all my life, working and watching people cover Arsenal and covering them themselves, I don't know of many people who go off and have one-on-one interviews with Arsene Wenger. I mean, he doesn't have any. If he does have favourites, you don't know who they are, and he does not seem to have any. Whereas, most managers will have one or two journalists they'll always go to if they want things coming out or whatever. I don't believe Arsene Wenger does. He's very sort of fair and open in that respect. So, but I have obviously had a lot of close quarter interviews with him. We used to, in the good old days, where I say before everything was organised and everything had to be at 9 o'clock every Friday morning, the interviews, and now we might get 6 or 7 minutes with him if we're lucky. The Sunday papers on a Friday. Back then, we'd go off, he'd do his TV stuff or whatever, and then the newspapers would go into another room and sit down quietly and just maybe chat for 20 minutes about whatever was coming up in that time, and that could be from what was happening at Arsenal, or what was happening in the world, or what was happening at other clubs. And it was a particularly, open, rare situation where you were able to talk and feel you were getting to know someone purely on a football level, purely on a sort of talking sport, talking life, not on a social level at all. But that is quite rare, even in this world where you might cover clubs regularly. But he was particularly personable individual, and he still is actually. Despite everything he's been through. So he was very sort of powerful personality, even for the journalists. And I know I'm not the only one who would speak like this, but he was quite overwhelming in the respect of how interesting he could be on numerous different topics, numerous different subjects. And I have to say that's what sort of enamoured me to him in that respect. And throughout this time, he's still, in fairness, even though he's had some pretty hard times and very difficult times, he's always been very good with the press in that respect. He does always face up and front up, which other managers, when they're going through very hard times, sometimes don't. So whatever one thinks of him, he is very good like that. He will always face the media, as it were.
And I had a question. It just came to me pretty much, but he seems fairly, especially in this day and age where he is under quite a bit of pressure, seems fairly insulated from it, or completely able to act as though it's not there. And I'm just wondering if you have any sense, from knowing the man a little bit better, that, I mean, you talk to him directly. Most of the people we know just talk to him through their television sets.
Sure.
But is it that he is insulated and not, and really kind of feeling as though he's still in charge and unquestioned, or does he recognize that there's a growing tide of concern, or let's just call it concern to be nice, and just doesn't really care or let it bother him, or does it bother him?
Well, I mean, I don't believe. I would like to think that, of course, it bothers him, and he's surely aware of it. You couldn't not be. If you walk into the Emirates on a Saturday afternoon when things have been getting very feisty, and as the supporters perhaps became more divided, of course he's aware of it, and whether and how he's able to have that resilient nature to shrug it aside is another matter totally. And I would say that's probably part of his forte in the respect he's able to have that sort of tunnel vision and maybe blank and switch things, keep things out of the view, and they don't, not be affected too much by it. But I do believe this is my own opinion, but in the last couple of years, 18 months, I think I've noticed a difference in the respect he is far more aware of it now, and perhaps he knows, as he said before, whatever he does, he can't win anymore, and there will always be certain sections who perhaps don't want him there anymore. Now, whether that's a majority, minority, which he often has thrown up over in times when responding to it. How do you know it's a majority, and how do you know what percentage want me out? And which is often his argument, and that one's obviously very difficult to prove. And I think
it depends on who you're listening to, really.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it depends on who you're listening to, and I think also, as you would know, for what he's done for that club, everyone has that respect for the sort of first 10 years, as it were, and. I think a lot of Arsenal fans have found it very hard to want to disown him. It is almost, how do you do that? Your favourite sporting man, of your whole life, who's changed and given you such good times. And I've obviously a lot of friends who've, been following and watching Arsenal and supporting them through thick and thin far longer than I've been covering them. And they have it is a real personal dilemma for them. Yeah. When they feel they're going to have to turn against the man who, let's face it, meant everything to them, only a few years ago. So that is and that is part of the problem. I think we've had, you've had at Arsenal in this last 3 or 4 years, is people having to recognise that perhaps he isn't the man to lead them on anymore, and how are they going to deal with that in an age where everyone and the media want to see everyone's opinions every day of every week. It is 24/7, as we know. And
it's like the 12 stages of grief, basically, in a breakup. Some people can go through those 12 stages in one day and come out the other end, done with them. And other people, it takes a long time. I know for me, it took many, many years of being on the fence about the whether he should still be the manager or not. I kept going back and forth. It was very difficult for me to make up my mind. Once I finally got, slightly on the other side of the fence, I just wanted to make sure to protect the respect and the legacy. And it became, some people have skipped straight towards hatred. And I think that's just, that's unfair and unreasonable and disgusting. But, it is certainly a hot button topic, and one we'll continue to talk about throughout the pod. I want to quickly touch on the HPL. I took a look at this, and I'm fascinated by this. The hypothetical Premier League. This is something you started with your son, is that right?
Well, actually, he was a bit young when I first did it. Back in, I think it was 2009, 10 season, ridiculously. I had sort of in my own sporting football obsession and watching far too much football at home as well as live and covering it. But I was starting to get really fed up with what I thought were sort of major decisions on live games or on our TVs, that were sort of wrecking the night's viewing in the respect, because we all knew the decision was completely wrong that had been made in the 7th minute of a game, and
I like that it's not that you're not an Arsenal supporter in that regards, because a lot of people claim that Arsenal is the constant victim of referees, and I just think I'm a law of large numbers guy, and it feels to me like we're constantly the victim. But so for you as more of a neutral to still feel the refereeing is that bad, to start the Mike Dean League, the hypothetical Premier League.
Yeah.
That says
and to be honest, it was more to me because I'm a huge tennis fan as well, and because they'd brought in Hawkeye at tennis, and it made such a difference, and the quality of tennis has improved so much on the court, and the matches have got so much better since they've had Hawkeye, because it takes out that sort of psychological warfare with a referee or an umpire, in the respect you feel you're being hard done to during a match, and therefore the individual player is able to shake off the disappointment of the call, which before Hawkeye they would have had a massive row with the umpire and it would have bothered them for the next half an hour. But of course they can get it out of the way, TV, right or, with the Hawkeye, and they get on with the match. And I think that's, I really believe that's why, that we've seen some of the greatest tennis matches have come in the last 10 years, because people are able to overcome that psychological blow of a bad call. And obviously, I appreciate on a football pitch it's different because they're 11v11, but there's no doubt sometimes in games, bad refereeing decisions can really upset a team to the point that they can't get back into it. So that was my thinking there, and I just sort of started thinking, well, we've got to have TV replays. And then then there was that dramatic. 6 months later was the goal with the Frank Lampard goal for England against Germany in the World Cup.
Yeah.
Which, and that, so I'd already started doing these hypothetical Premier League. And it sort of went from there a bit, and then realised it was an absolute mammoth task. I didn't do it for 2 or 3 more years because you can imagine it's sort of not being a great man with figures. I have to say more words, man. It was a hard one to keep doing every week when you get home. So a couple of years ago, I enlisted my boy Louis to join me. So, and he's particularly good at doing tables and with the maths and figures. So we did it. It was the Leicester one, actually. We didn't do it last season actually, but because we just didn't. But we are doing it this season again. But
I was looking back at 2015-16, the year that Leicester won the Premier League, and it wasn't Leicester that won the HPL, was it? Do you recall offhand who it was?
Well, I've got a feeling it just might have been Arsenal sneaking it by a point or two, if I remember rightly. But I got a lot of abuse over that. You're an Arsenal fan, typical. Because of course they went straight onto my Twitter page and saw pictures of Louis and me going to football at Arsenal. But I can assure you that was totally, totally neutral. And in fact, it wasn't. I tend to do it because I do it rather than it's my opinion. So we'll look at a game and then so whatever the referee's decision, then we use the pundits who are on Match of the Day or Sky or BT Sport. So if Shearer and Ian Wright say that wasn't a penalty, then we do it like that, really. So that's how we tend to. It's actually not my own personal opinion or take on it. So
Andy, I think we should start doing a podcast in reaction to the hypothetical Premier League if that gets started back up again. We'll talk about the games based on your summaries of them, and it'll be a whole bizarro world podcast. And you gave me a great idea because I started a website with my son. It's called the Hypothetical Good Husband and Father League, where we go back and
Mike always wins.
Yeah, we go back. A team of good men go back and correct all the stupid decisions I've made to see how good life could be if I wasn't such a dick. Yeah. So it's a great idea. Great idea. So again, we're happy to have you on, Harry. And I warned you, there's a question of the week. We do it sometimes, we don't do it sometimes. But this one goes back to our best friend of the pod, one of them anyway, Joey Murphy. We love Joey, and he was showing us some details on a WhatsApp chat that we have of a VIP Emirates Legends Tour. Emirates does Legends Tours all the time. I've been on one with Charlie George. But this was a VIP one costing £350 and starring the incomparable Lee Dixon, who, by the way, one last time, I just got to plug the podcast with the Gooner Ramble Girls a couple weeks ago. If you haven't listened to it, it was an hour interview with Lee Dixon about Anfield '89, about Arsene Wenger, about playing for him, his current day. It's an excellent, excellent podcast. But so the VIP tour for £350 includes dinner and drinks. So they would have lost money on me already, and a signing session with Lee. Autograph signing. But when Joey typed it in our WhatsApp group, I thought he said singing session, which to me would have been a little bit more worth the money. So the question of the week is, if you were part of this VIP tour and had a singing session with Lee Dixon, what song would you choose to sing with him? And Andy, I will start with you.
Yeah, not being much of
because I've heard you sing.
Yeah, I was going to say not being much of a singer. I'd almost have to go with Toto's Africa, or just a song that a lot of people know the words to. They could sing along with. So but that would be probably, or Sweet Caroline, something like that.
Sweet Caroline.
All I'll tell you, Mike, is it's Shambolic, Eddie's song that we go with.
Yeah, it is. And to imagine you with Lee Dixon in a singing session is ridiculous, but that's what we're all about. Harry, any thoughts on the song that you would sing?
obviously you've thrown this one on me quite, and because I'm in that anti-referee mode, I'd have to go the Man in Black, Johnny Cash.
Nice. Okay.
And also because if I do ever do karaoke, I always need a song with quite a deep, low voice, so I don't need to sing too much.
Yeah.
So I think I'd just the Man in Black, and we love Johnny Cash. So there you go.
We have a friend in our neighborhood who's got a very, very low voice, and every time we do karaoke or rock band or whatever, there's 2 songs he can sing, and I can't even remember what they are, but it's one of them I think was Johnny Cash. My initial thought was, anytime I'm asked about what song to sing, it always ends up being this. But there's no words to that song, so I kind of see Lee Dixon as being a fan of Erasure. Do you remember the band Erasure?
Yeah.
When I lived there in the late '80s, they were at the top of the charts. They were like pop, just obnoxious pop, Euro type
Dreadful.
of band. And Lee kind of had the look at the time, with his blonde hair so I mean I'd say I'd go with a little respect from Erasure, and if the DJ didn't have that, and of course we'd have to have Paul as the DJ.
Quality song, they'll have it.
It's a good song, but if they don't have it, I'll go with "Me So Horny" by Two Live Crew, which also came out around that same time. So,
okay.
That would be
a late '90s, early '90s. It'd have been sort of it's that Happy Mondays era, isn't it, from the Manchester era? So right. But there you go. He it might have been because that's where he originally came from, wasn't it? Out there, I think. If I remember right. It's strangely enough, he's doing a big. He has a charity thing where he does Arsenal talks, doesn't he? I don't know if you know where he gets ex-players to come and talk to Arsenal fans, and he's doing one tonight in Highbury, which is held. They're sort of hosted by Highbury Corner. Actually, he's doing one with David Seaman tonight. So, then I think they're very good, but unfortunately, then the press don't get invited. Surprise, surprise.
Wow. Well, what I would not. Well, I would gladly surrender my position in the press, which is a joke. I'm kidding. To be able to go to that, but that.
I'm sure. Yeah. He's a top man, though, Lee Dixon, and he's been getting quite a lot of stick in the last few days, hasn't he, for comments he's made about Arsenal or whatever. So,
wow. I think he deserves to say whatever he wants to say.
Absolutely, he's a brilliant pundit. I'd say one of the best.
We get him here in the USA on the main, whatever the number one NBC game is. It's him and Graham Lasso and right. some tosser that we don't care for that much.
I've never heard him though overstep the bounds. Sometimes you hear a pundit and you're like, all right, you're getting a little bit heavy on the anti-Arsenal agenda, and I think he's very fair. He's very concise, and I think you can tell it pains him sometimes to have to watch this and not be able to really give his personal opinion.
Yeah,
his true personal opinion. I think he's great.
So let's talk about Bournemouth. Because we actually have some positivity to discuss this week. Last week was a bit of or the week before was a little bit of a purge of emotions. But this is a good week. So, Andy, you saw the lineup come out. Is this our best 11? You think now with the players we have, other than possibly swapping out? And I say this pre-game feelings, Alexis for Welbeck.
Yeah, I think that. And the Monreal, even though I thought Monreal played very well, I still think that we could probably slot a pure center back in there and maybe be a little bit stronger defensively. But yeah, outside of the Welbeck Alexis position, that was the only other one. But otherwise, I thought we were pretty spot on.
And that worked out fairly well, as a matter of fact.
No, it did. It did. Fair play to Welbeck, because it was really funny when the lineup came out. All the people on Twitter were giving him so much shit, and then everyone at halftime was,
Oh, I did the same.
Oh yeah, I mean everyone did, but that's what we do,
I tweeted, we had friends at the game, Ola, Andy, Amanda, and I said, I'm praying for you guys in the event that you're sitting in the path of an errant Welbeck shot. Just watch your heads, pay attention at all times. And then within 3 or 4 minutes, the ball's bouncing off his head and going into the net. And I got rightfully, my tweet was retweeted as like a mockery, which it is. But anytime I can lay the hoodoo on one of our players and call him out and then have him make me look stupid, hey, I'm happy to take the bullet. So
he was obviously reading your feed pre-match.
There's no question. In fact, you could see when the players were coming out of the tunnel, he was looking at his phone and like shaking his head.
Going to put this one right. Yeah.
Not a shabby game from that guy. So, any thoughts, Harry, on the redemption of Danny Welbeck in one game, or was it?
Well, I think it would take more than one game and I think that's probably part of the problem. With Danny Welbeck since he's been at Arsenal is the fact he hasn't had the consistent run through injuries, and obviously he was out for a long time, was meant to come back and then didn't, and best part of. So you've sort of missed a lot of football from Danny Welbeck, and of course he'll have good games and then get injured, and then it's very hard, I think, for any player if they're not fit and playing consistently to then get into a run of form. I think he is possibly one of those strikers. I wouldn't necessarily think he's going to be a 25, 30 goal a season person, even if he did play 38 games a season, but he might be, 12 to 18 goals. So whether, and I'm not sure he should be the lone striker like he has at times played, but he doesn't need to be, obviously, with the current forwards you've got at the club. So if he can stay fit, I think he's an excellent player to have. And it's a matter of for him to take that opportunity and to make sure that he's, keeps putting the ball in there, because that's clearly has been his problem. He's not quite as ruthless as one would like from a striker. Mm-hmm. But I thought he obviously played very well on Saturday, and he did all right for England when he came on the other week. And so the main thing is he would seem to be fit. And the other good thing you'll get from him, always, and I know it gets sort of should go without saying with professional footballers, but that he's giving his all whether that's what is good enough at times is another matter. But, he always is giving it out there, which, is a good example. And he can pressurise from the front, which sometimes I think Arsenal lack or have lacked with the strikers. So, and of course, if you're pressurising from the front, then the midfield do the same, and then it can sort of click throughout the team. So, let's hope that he stays fit and he can keep producing the goods.
Absolutely.
And you can tell he's giving his all, because every time he takes a shot, he falls over, and it's just putting his whole body into it. It's crazy how almost 100% that is. But hey, just keep scoring. You can fall over, do somersaults, is whatever you want.
Absolutely, yeah.
Another player that seemed to be giving his all on Saturday was Ozil, and I thought his performance, his body language, when you look at him on the pitch, he was sprinting down the opposition, making runs up top, taking shots, getting frustrated when the ball wasn't coming his direction. I think he answered some of the verbal response from that Facebook message he sent out. Mike, if he shows up like that in 80% of the games he plays in, because it's impossible for someone to be on point every match, but, the critics won't be nipping at him if that's the way he plays. And again, poor Bournemouth side, but, as Harry just said, show some effort at least and create that body language that you are putting in 100%, and the fans will back you. And so what were your thoughts on his performance, Mike?
It was very good. Very, very good. It was, you pretty much just said it. It was everything he needed to show, in my opinion. Is he playing at peak Mesut Ozil performance? Is he playing at Germany Mesut Ozil performance? Not yet, but he also doesn't have the players around him that he has on the German national team. But I think it is important at this point for him to show the intent, for him to show, the desire, because his words and his actions and his body language, like you said, don't always match. And, those things shouldn't be the most important thing. It should be his overall play. But, as far as the court of public opinion, and we all have opinions over Alexis, but Mesut Ozil's in the exact same contract position. So when it comes to, to how the fans relate and how strongly we get behind him, I think he showed everything that he needed to show. And he had already shown. I was one of the ones who took a lot of positive out of what he said online on social media, and didn't get too cynical about it as a lot of other people did. And I hope he keeps continuing to show, because that's the Mesut Ozil we need.
Harry, what were your thoughts as a journalist reading Ozil's message to the supporters or his critics? And do you think and again, obviously we need to see more than one match, but do you think he's responding in the right way as he showed with his performance on Saturday?
Yeah, words are irrelevant actions, as we know, speak a lot louder than words. And to be honest, I was surprised with his comments that he came out, but at least, therefore, he was reacting, and it maybe things that had been said about him, you know, if they were hurting him, that's not a bad thing either. It's better than him being indifferent and not really giving two flying shots about it and just carrying on as he was. So I suppose the words suggested that he got angry about it and he was upset, and his performance suggested he's going to do something about it week in, week out. And it's week in, week out, which is the key. Because, a good afternoon against Bournemouth, great, but, let's face it, that's not the match that, let's see what happens next Sunday when it really counts. And often he's accused of going missing in the big games, in inverted commas, for Arsenal in particular. So it would be nice to see that carried through. And of course, next Sunday's game is another crunch one, isn't it? Beating Bournemouth. So they should. You expect them to win on Thursday, in the Europa League. But we all know if things go wrong on next Sunday, then they'll be back to square one a bit. With everyone will, move back to where they were before when the international break finished a bit. So I think it's sort of tempered, should we say, the criticism of him. And he did have a good game, and he, seemed like their heart. In fact, it seemed like everyone's heart was in it, which was a hell of a lot more than the previous, 2 weeks earlier at Anfield, wasn't it? So, and that is the key. That maybe because the window is shut now, and we haven't really got to go through this situation until January, that perhaps the players, they're there now, aren't they, at the club till December, till January, whatever, and hopefully they can get a collective team spirit, and that's the key. Because with anything, if you start winning and you start getting good results, whether Alexis Sanchez really would have preferred to have been playing somewhere 3 months ago won't matter come November if he's enjoying his football and everyone's sort of singing off that same sheet, at the Emirates, and that is possible for that to happen, but it will all be dictated by results. Because, as we know, that is the key, especially when you've been so many years in this sort of relentless, repetitive situation where things go well and then they dip down. So everyone will be waiting for the next big game, and that is Sunday. I mean, it's coming actually a bit too quick, I think, for Arsenal. But in that respect, hopefully they can continue and play, as a team and play together. But winning will help that, that's for sure.
Oh, I can't argue there. Mike, let's go to Alexis Sanchez, because he came on, in the 72nd or 73rd minute as a substitute. Clearly, he's rested because of his trips back from Central America, Chile. South America.
Chile's in South America.
Are the Alexis Boo Boys warranted? I mean, he didn't ask for a transfer publicly. He hasn't come out whining in public like other players do. He isn't, causing a ruckus in the locker room or going to social media. Is the booing a reflection of the larger picture of fan discontent with the manager and the board spilling over to this situation? I mean, he hasn't done anything that we've seen in the past from the Ashley Coles, the Diego Costas. I mean, he's carried on as the great professional we know him to be. And so why are the boos happening? I mean, would you have booed if you were in the stadium? I wouldn't have. I mean,
No, I mean, only Ola boos when he comes out. But no, I'm just kidding. There were plenty of boos. First of all, he didn't ask for a transfer request publicly, but I think I think I'm safe in believing the news that he certainly asked to leave. I appreciate that he didn't hand in a request and go to the press about it, but all right. So there's that. He hasn't come out whining in public. In fact, he hasn't come out saying anything in public. He's cryptic, and what I appreciated about Mesut Ozil, even though it was a public relations stunt, no question, was that he at least gave a statement on what his feelings were. And Alexis's silence, I don't look at it as being a positive. I look at it as being, a scheming thing. And causing trouble in the locker room. Again, there's plenty of smoke by that fire to assume that his teammates don't particularly care for him that much. And so were the boos warranted? I don't think you should. how to support him has been such a hot button topic. I don't think you should boo a player who steps out onto the pitch in your team's shirt. Believe me, I was at the Palace game last year when Bellerin indirectly, it wasn't directly, but indirectly got just a shitstorm from the away section. You're not fit to wear the shirt. Not necessarily booing, but I mean that was harsh. But it was just an overpouring of emotion there. But I don't boo the players. I don't root for the team to lose so that things like a removal of a manager or an owner can happen, because it's just it takes all the fun out of it to turn a game on and not want to see a demolition of the other squad. So, but I'm sure as hell don't have fuzzy feelings about Alexis. I'm not a huge fan of his right now. I'm not going to get up and sing his name and be excited. To me, he's got something to show. If he keeps showing up, puts in top shifts without antics and making himself the center of attention, if he can get his teammates and strap them to his back rather than alienating them, and proves he's the top 10 player in the world that everybody thinks he is, then I'll cheer him. But it's going to take me a little while. I wouldn't boo him, but I can understand just sitting there silent and saying, "Show me something."
Absolutely. Harry? Who was your man of the match in the game?
Well, that's a tricky one because I have to say, because I was my duties took me to Chelsea v Leicester or Leicester v Chelsea. I haven't watched the full 90 minutes. I only watched the highlights. Extended though they were, so it was tricky to see. Not too well that was good in the thing. I mean, I would have to say I'll have to abstain on that because I didn't watch the full 90 minutes. What I did like, though, from what I saw, was a pace to the way Arsenal were playing, moving forward, and their passing at times was quick and sharp and incisive, which is something that, apart from only 2 or 3 times last season, I hadn't seen for a long time, and that to me suggested they were all knitting together. Now, whether that was Bournemouth that so off the pace and allowed them to play like that, which would maybe I think is probably half true, but I really enjoyed, from what I could see, there was a real fluency when they were and some of their exchanging and passing in and around the box was really quick and dynamic, and that is when Arsenal are for a neutral or even for their own supporters, that's when they become really enjoyable to watch again. So I thought that to me was the most promising sign from what I saw, because that clearly wasn't there, obviously, for 2 weeks earlier at Anfield. And in fact, it hadn't really even been there. Certainly at Stoke, I thought they were a bit laboured, even though they had a lot of possession. And even that game against Leicester, which I did watch live from my hotel room in the Dominican with my lad Louis, they were actually pretty lucky, weren't they, to come away with that with 3 points. So I thought that was the most, as I say, pleasing aspect from watching the game, was how they moved the ball quickly and with pace, because that is when they become their most effective.
Absolutely.
So I'd have to abstain, though. Who was the integral person in that performance? So apologies for that.
No, that's fine. Mike, who would you, just quick, who would you name your man of the match?
I'll name the guy whose shirt I was wearing during the match, which is Saeed Kolasinac. Becoming a huge fan of his.
Yeah. No, he had a great match, and he's quickly, I think even the TV announcers over here said he's quickly becoming a cult hero for Arsenal supporters. My man of the match is probably going to go to Danny. I think I text you, Mike, saying I love to see England players score for Arsenal, but he was making good runs off the ball. He had the two goals. He played really well. But then I think you could also give an honorable mention to Ozil, because I thought that he stuck out, and he was unfortunate not to have a goal or two as well.
Yeah, I mean he getting on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Wait, who did you say? Didn't you say Danny?
I said Danny, but then honorable mention was Ozil.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I tuned out for a second there. Yeah, Ozil was definitely up there. I think the whole team gets a man of the match for that one.
Yeah.
So, what's next? We got a couple. One thing I want while we still have you on, Harry, is this week we talked about Arsene Wenger. He had some specific comments aimed at the media, with a little bit of aim at the supporters as well. And I don't know how the media reacts when Arsene talks about the media, but one thing I know is that supporters just love when he scolds and complains the supporters not being behind the team enough and talks about that. So this time he says about the media that they like to stir up controversy, specifically saying, you work very hard to get the fans on our back. As a member of the media, what's your response to that?
Well, I'd say we don't even need to work hard to get them on his back. I'm being actually dead serious. When I heard
does it bother you when he says that?
No, I mean, I don't care at all, because it would be totally untrue that we'd work hard to get any fans or anything on anyone's back. The fact is, there's been several groups have been in operation for a long, long time about, they want Wenger out, or so that's a long-running situation. So they don't need to certainly be encouraged. I mean, to put it into perspective, not last season, but 2 seasons ago, when I was covering them, and I think they beat Swansea 3-0, and it was in November. They were top of the table. Actually, it might have even been 3 seasons ago. So they were top of the table at the time. And my boy Louis was going back to London. So I put him on the train from Swansea. And I texted him and then announced, are you home? And he went, yeah, home date. He said, you won't believe it. The police had to be called to stop Arsenal fans fighting over Arsene Wenger. Should he be staying? They had to stop the train, call the police on, because a fight had broken out between Arsenal fans. This was when they were top of the table in November 2 or 3 seasons ago. So what I'm saying is there is an element there. It's fractured at the club, and I think you asked me earlier, is he aware of it? And I think he is now. Do you see what I mean? And that does affect his decision making and what he does from now on. So that is my point. The media don't need to be involved to get fans on Arsene's back or the team's back. I mean, Wenger did that he did that on his own at Anfield, and the team did it on their own at Anfield 2 weeks ago, with their performance and with the selection of the team that puzzled everyone, including obviously the 11 players that were on the pitch to start off with. So I think really that was, it just didn't make sense to me, really. So, of course, once there is a situation and that, if there's a protest or if there are banners flying over grounds, etc., then the media might jump on it. And, of course, then it becomes a story in itself, as it were. But I certainly don't think the fans who are against Wenger or who are against certain things happening at the club need the media to be encouraging them. I think they're there already.
Excellent. All right, so now we got some user questions. We did not get to user questions last week because we had 2 hours of ridiculous banter, but we're going to get to them this week. So thank you for all of you that sent them in. We are recycling some of the ones from last week so that we can get them on. So starting with Stéphane Gonthier, is that, if I were able to have a French accent, I could have gotten that, but Stéphane Gonthier emails us. If you could go back in time and swap out one current player with a player from the past, who would you swap? For example, he says, you could swap out Welbeck for Michael Thomas, or swap out Koscielny 2017 for the 2011 version. And I'm going to modify the question a little bit to, you can only sub in players from Arsenal's last 10 years, and you have to swap him out for someone who's regularly in the match day lineup now. Otherwise, we're going to get, I'll bring in Bergkamp for Theo fucking Walcott, or Patrick Vieira for the cock. I mean, we can't have that. That's too obvious. So would you swap out a player from today's current lineup and bring in someone from the last 10 years, 2007 and after? Andy?
It's a great question. Before La Gazette, I would have said any of our strikers for Thierry Henry, obviously.
Thierry Henry wasn't with us in the last 10 years, so maybe you would have had to have
I think you need to go back and see when we played Leeds in the FA Cup, my friend.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And I even thought about that, and you just fucking tricked me. Yeah. But it would have to be that Thierry Henry, though.
Well, he's still probably better than a lot of the...
I would agree.
I will probably say more or less take Patrick Vieira and probably replace
he wasn't with us the last 10 years.
Jesus Christ, it's got to be 10 years. Then Fabregas.
Okay. And who would you put him in for?
Ramsey.
Okay. Good enough. Harry, you have
Well, you just nipped me my one in the bud. If I had to go for another, I would go for that most hated of men now, but Adebayo when he was at his peak, and probably for I'd probably have to go for Mr. Welbeck.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I mean, I'm
talking about when he wanted to play for Arsenal and when he was scoring incredible
yes,
goals
absolutely.
for a while.
He was quite a player. I mean, I remember a goal. I think it was against Roma, possibly in the Champions League. It was practically an overhead kick. It was just sublime. I mean, that guy used to score some amazing goals, and then he turned it.
Well, I always remember him tearing Tottenham apart at the lane once. And just extraordinary. But
his best contribution in a derby was when he was playing for Tottenham, though, and got an idiotic red card 10 minutes into the game. That probably was his greatest moment in Arsenal history. So, and I just want to point out to Stefan that the 2011 version of Koscielny single-handedly cost us a piece of silverware that year. So I'm not so sure that I'd be rushing to get him into the current squad. But for pure banter, I would bring back Emmanuel Frimpong. I love that guy, but he could not play football. But I'd bring him back. But seriously, I would bring in Aaron Ramsey from 2013, 2014, and swap out Aaron Ramsey of the current day. He was an amazing footballer that one year. I don't know what kind of steroids he was on or what, but he was on fire. Or I'd bring in Theo Walcott from any year that he was playing for a new contract and replace the coffee machine lame-ass current-day Theo Walcott. So, excellent question, Stefan. I appreciate it. Hope I didn't butcher your name too much. You got the next question, Andy, or do you need me to do this?
No, I can do it. At Dean Worley asks, would you want to see Arsenal drop games if it means Kroenke or Wenger leaves? Mike.
We were criticized for saying Wenger instead of Wenger. Harry, how does Arsene like to be referred to?
Well, I have to say I've never asked him, but I would always call him Arsene Wenger.
Yeah, see, that's what there was somebody that was completely slating one of our guests from a couple of weeks ago because he called him Wenger, and I think this guest called him Wenger on purpose.
And I just did it on purpose too. But I also think the person you're talking about, Mike, no longer listens to our podcast because when we told him to calm down, he got really upset and kind of threw his toys out of the pram. So he can go fuck himself if he's still listening.
Did you just get a bell? Yes, you just got a bell. All right. So, look, I mean, I kind of addressed this a little earlier on. Losing, and Wenger, I won't talk about Wenger as much as I will Kroenke in this case because his name really hasn't come up yet in this podcast. Losing games is not going to make Kroenke leave. Becoming unprofitable is what's going to make Kroenke leave. And sadly, that would take years and years of failure. Mass exodi of marquee players, and some really wrongly spent money on the wrong players after that don't help us back up the table again. Because even if we became just a full-on selling club, slashed our wage bill, made continual transfer profits year after year, and kept finishing mid-table like a Southampton or West Brom, we will still be a profitable enterprise. It's just not at the same magnitude as before. So one thing that's going to make him sell. Someone offering him about twice what the club is worth, like $3.5–4 billion. And there's really only one person that's even remotely interested in doing that, and it's like Dangote from Nigeria. I don't know what he's waiting for. He keeps saying in a few years I'll buy the team. But if he wanted to buy the team, you'd think he could do it now. But no, I don't ever want to see Arsenal drop games. I've heard people say that before. I don't understand how you tune into a game, you watch them come out of the tunnel and say, God, I hope we give up an early goal and then completely fall apart and go down to 10 men. I mean, that's just not in my locker. So no, I wouldn't. Okay, Andy, a question from Jeremy DeMonte. Why was Debuchy not sold? And does Jack have a realistic chance, your boy Jack, for competing for Ramsey's spot?
Who knows why Debuchy wasn't sold? I mean, at the end of the day, he was on the transfer market. My guess is his wages are a little higher, and so clubs are a little bit more reluctant to want to pay him as much as he's making with us. As far as Jack, yeah, a fit Jack Wilshere and a healthy Jack Wilshere who can stay in the side will definitely challenge Ramsey. But that's not gonna solve our center midfield issues. We need that ball winning midfielder or deep lying midfielder. But a fully fit Jack is a hell of a player, and so we'll just have to see what happens. But I think Jack is probably the closest player we have in this squad that could replace Santi for the level of ability to make something happen out of nothing.
Yeah, if he's still got that ability. I mean, I guess we ought to find out sooner than later. We've got Europa League and the Caribou Cup coming up, so something's got to happen. And our final user question for today from Steve-O, who he's not a jackass as far as we know. How can supporters show disdain for summer business or lack thereof without making match day hostile? Andy, I'll go to you again on that.
Yeah, it's one of those things, Mike, where it's impossible to do unless you hit the pocket of the owner and the manager. And at the end of the day, I was talking to Andy, and there's a season waiting list of 70,000 people. So even if everyone at the Emirates decided that they weren't going to renew their season ticket, you have a bunch of other people that will. And so the only way to do it is to hit the wallet, and that's not buy the new kit. That's not buy food. That's not buy drinks.
But I can't help it. I like food and drinks, and I like
wearing. Buy it
clothes.
Buy it outside of the club. Buy the knockoff. But honestly,
I'm supposed to be naked and hungry and thirsty.
Well, I know that you're going low carb, so this will help with your weight loss. And ultimately, if you're going to start shedding the amount of pounds, Mike, you should wait to buy your clothes anyway.
Yeah, that's probably.
But on an all serious note, it's that it's don't buy any of the new shit. Don't buy any of the food. Just and then people will question why, and then they'll ask why. But Mike, like you said, it doesn't matter what happens. This billionaire owns our club, and until his zeros start moving, nothing will change. And me personally, you hear about Zuckerberg wanting to buy Tottenham.
Oh no!
Here's a guy who could give Kroenke $4 billion, and he doesn't see his bank account move.
Yeah,
I mean that's how much he's worth. And so if he's really looking for an investment, go with a global brand and I think that you could get Kroenke.
Can you imagine Facebook on the front of the kit? Facebook Stadium. You guys going to the Facebook today?
Well, at the end of the day, that might be what I would take that. I would take that over the current situation, the current ownership.
I would too. And my plan for
Instagram Stadium.
Exactly. My plan for showing disdain is just everyone should just have beans and tons of cabbage before every game, and just once they get into the Emirates, they just spend the whole thing farting. I mean, it's not hostile, it's not loud, it won't distract the players on the pitch too much, but it's just silent but deadly kind of
silent but deadly support.
Exactly, and that's all I can come up with. So if anyone has any better ideas, send them in. And thank you again to our users with the fantastic questions. We'll solicit some for next week as well. And we move on, where the three of us pick the top three, in my opinion, games from next weekend, and pick a winner and the score. It's a season-long running contest where the guest spot is currently in second place with a total of 6 points after 4 match days. I'm leading with 8, and Andy, you've got 4. Dude, what's wrong with you this year? I'm doubling you up right now.
I don't necessarily trust you.
We're only 3 games in. Come on,
yeah,
we're 4 games in, and it was enough for De Boer to get the sack. So Andy might have to find another podcast to do.
As reigning champion, again, I have to go back and have my legal team audit your scoring.
It should be easy after 4 matches.
I also have to comment that I think you might be a closet Man United fan, because every week there's a Manchester United game in this Pick'ems, and frankly, Mike, you should look at yourself in the mirror.
I do I do everything I can not to look at myself in the mirror. So yeah, I'm doubling you up. I've got 8. You've got 4. I would say you're at 6s and 7s, but you're actually just at 4s. So we'll see what you can do about that this week. First game of the week is Friday Night Football. It's a South Coast derby. Brighton at Bournemouth. I'll go with Bournemouth. They're going to wipe off the spanking we gave them and grab their first points of the season, but it's going to be a tight 1-0. Andy, what do you have?
This actually could be a fun game to watch. But I also think Bournemouth turned things around. They're a lot better of a side than what we've been seeing recently. And I think Eddie Howe will make the necessary adjustments. And I'll echo your scoreline of 1-0.
Okay.
It's
a strong strategy copying the leader so that you remain the same number of points behind. All right, Harry.
Give the guest a sort of an advantage here. In the respect, I'll choose a different score, but I'm going to go 1-1, and purely because having seen Brighton at Watford 2 weeks ago, where they were really very good, I was impressed with what I saw of the highlights of their 3-0 win at the weekend against West Brom, who, let's face it, a never easy team to turn over in that respect. So I'm going to go 1-1. I think, especially a Friday night game. The fans will all get delayed on the motorway. It'll be a bit of a nightmare getting there on that south coast in rush hour on a Friday evening. So let's go 1-1. Stalemate.
That's an excellent rationale for a 1-1 tie there.
Yeah.
Draw. Sorry. Everton at Manchester United. You got me, but this one, you had to put this game in, Andy, because it's a week of returns for Wayne Rooney. This week he makes his long-awaited, maybe not that long-awaited, but he makes his big return to Old Trafford. Last weekend he made a long-awaited return to cheating on his pregnant wife. So it's reunion week for him. And Harry, you don't know this, but Andy's wife was recently pregnant. Andy, when she was pregnant, would you have gotten in the car of the girl you were cheating on her with after drinking a few dozen beers, or would you have used better judgment?
I think I would have used better judgment. Yeah.
You would have gotten in an Uber with the girl that you were cheating on her with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I mean,
or make her drive at least.
Yeah.
So he could hide and go, "I'm not Wayne Rooney."
Right. She's my Uber driver.
Exactly. I'm going to sit in the back seat. As for the game, United wins 4-0. Andy?
Yeah, based off of what Everton looked like this weekend, I can't for a minute think that they're going to win. So I'm going to go 3-1 United.
Okay.
And I'm going 3-1 to United. Not 3-1-2, but 3-1 also.
3-1 as well. Okay.
Just to clarify.
Okay, and then last but not least, of course, is always the Arsenal game. Arsenal at Chelsea. Oy vey.
Oh dear.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm back to you going for the reverse jinx here, and maybe I'm a little crazy and ignorant because I actually think we would have a shot here if it wasn't for that stupid game on Thursday. But I'll go with Chelsea 3-1 and hope that I'm proven wrong again. Andy.
Yeah, I don't see us grabbing a point from this, and my head wants to say that we will.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. But this team right now and the locker room just is in a weird situation. So I'm going to go a 2-0 Chelsea win. And again, Mike, I hope that the jinx will it's going to be a shit show.
I don't know. Chelsea's in a lot of trouble if they don't win the game too. But yeah, it could be bad.
They will be. But
now, Harry, you covered them last week. So what do you think we have headed our way?
Well, they played well, and I have to say, I think their new striker Morata looks excellent. I have to say. So, but for sort of and to show how I still have this strange, even though I wouldn't say I'm an Arsenal fanatic and a fan like your good selves, I'm going to go that they're going to grab a draw 1-1.
Wow. Okay.
And my rationale is here, it purely is, and I'll just give a quick reason why. I think that, as I said, now that transfer window is closed, and the players that maybe wanted to go are there, and the ones that did go have gone. that it is time for, as you know, the group of players to be a collective unit and to recognise that they might as well go out and play properly each week. And hopefully, I'm saying, you know, a bit like they did in the FA Cup semi-final and the FA Cup final. And I think perhaps a big game might just make them a little bit more united, as it were. So fingers crossed for you lot. I'm going 1-1.
Well, let's do that. Let's root for that. All right, so we talked about, we got Chelsea, we got Cologne. One quick question about Cologne to not belabor the Europa League, but Andy, do we see Reiss Nelson in the starting 11?
I don't think we do. I don't think we see Reiss until the Copacabana Cup, and unfortunately, Mike, this is the perfect opportunity to put Reiss Nelson into our side because he's doing really well with the under-23s. And, maybe Cologne's not the team, maybe when we play one of the other Europa League games. But I think out of our group, this is probably going to be maybe that banana skin team. So maybe we'll see him. But I think the first time we see him is against West Brom. And if he performs there, then I see him getting integrated into our team much more heavily.
Well, I actually do think that we'll see him, and I kind of hope to see him. I think he could rise to this occasion. But and again, Chelsea, Harry, you from what you saw of Chelsea last weekend, they look like they're a little bit more behind their manager, fixed their early season hiccup.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's a lot written about. I mean, I think the manager will be up. That's between him and the and his superiors, shall we say, and the powers above. Perhaps will be where the clashes have been. I think the players he has there, they're clearly not playing for him, but they're playing for each other and as a team. So I don't think anyone can rely on Chelsea going AWOL this season.
No, I don't think so either. So,
no.
Some final thoughts. We every week we seem to pick up one or two new countries that have listened to us. On our fantastic software that tells us where our downloads are coming from. And we got 2 this week. I'm excited about both of them. Country number 96, Kuwait. Now, I don't understand who's turning on their computer in Kuwait.
That's got to be like
a service person?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's got to be like an Adam Hoffman type person who's overseas or something with the services.
Yeah, I mean, that I never really thought we'd penetrate into Kuwait very much, but Country 97, this opens up entirely new doors for us. And see if you can guess who the country is. We have a market share in that country now of exactly 0.00000001% of their population, but we're in there. Any guesses?
No.
Surprised it took this long, but. China.
I was about to say China or Russia just based off of the all the zeros, but it took that long to get China, huh?
It took a long time.
We've broken through their firewalls, Mike.
Or as Donald Trump says, China.
Oh, God.
But we're into China, and there's 1.3 minus 1 billion people there that still need to tune into us. But we're getting close to country 100.
Yeah.
We promise.
North Korea.
I hope that's not country 100 because we've promised to go make a visit to whatever country it is. So at this point, it's looking more likely than not it's going to be Essex. But so Harry, tell us where we can find you, where we can read you, hear you, smell you. Your Twitter's at @GHarryPratt. But what else is going on?
Well, I've got a column which is actually starting tomorrow on the dailystar.co.uk. Which will be a football-themed column, or you can read me usually, from about Saturday night, 11 p.m, either on dailystar.uk again, or express.co.uk.
Fantastic.
And of course, you will be able to when I get my head around it with my lad Louis. You will also be able to read the hpl.net, but we tend to let it run a few weeks before we start putting up the tape.
Well, let us know when it's up to date, and we'll take a look and see how much better we should be doing.
I'll start prompting you and plugging you. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Especially if Arsenal are in the top 4,
We'll be in the top 4. Even if we're in the relegation zone, we'll be in the top 4.
Exactly.
Last chance for Gooners versus Cancer.com. I know there's a lot of very needy causes and very valuable causes to be donating your charitable money to. But if you have anything left over, We are doing a fundraiser to defeat leukemia and lymphoma. The web address for it is www.goonersversuscancer.com. Please contribute if you can, and if you do contribute, we may allow you to name some embarrassing thing that I have to do for the show, which, of course, I will gladly do for an excellent cause. Any amount will help. So, Harry, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks very much, lads, and I hope the season goes smoothly.
Thanks, Harry. We appreciate it.
From here on in.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Come on, you Gooners.